Our guest today is distinguished and accomplished Klein College alumna, Nora Gerard. She is the director of the most watched television program on Sunday mornings called, appropriately enough, CBS Sunday Morning. Now in its 42nd year, this 90-minute show, a mix of news and culture, is a weekly ritual for millions of Americans across age groups, including yours truly. And Ms. Gerard has been its director for the past decade. She began her career in television after graduating from Temple, moving to New York to work for CBS as an assistant to the director for the Thanksgiving and Cotton Bowl parades. Love to hear about that. And she moved into a series of production and managerial positions that ultimately led her to becoming associate director of the CBS Morning News. She went on to work for the CBS Evening News and was part of the original staff of the news magazine show 48 Hours. In 2011, her various successes at CBS led the network to offer her to direct this Plum property, CBS Sunday Morning. Her work there has led to several award nominations, and she has become clearly one of the most respected directors in television. We're enormously proud to claim her as a member of our Klein College family, and we're just thrilled to have her here with us today to talk about her career and maybe to share how the pandemic has affected her work over the past year.
So I want to thank Dean Boardman and Professor Gluck for inviting me today. I'm really excited to sort of talk to students in this Power Hour because you guys are the future, and people passed on information to me, and I'm happy to pass it on to all of you. I'm just sort of sorry we have to do it via Zoom, but we've all gotten kind of used to this, I guess, in this time. So here we go. So when you saw that reel, the show's been on for 42 years. There have been 3 anchors and 3 directors in that time period. The show is truly a legendary show. It was started by the legendary producer Shad Northshield. Just so you know, it started out as a 6-day-a-week show. It was called Sunday morning, Monday morning, Tuesday morning. The only day that didn't have a show was Saturday. And if you look in the original panels on the original set that had all the days of the week carved into the plexiglass, Saturday is missing because Saturday was still protected time for children's cartoons. So the show was on Sunday through Friday. And the original concept for the Sunday show was to create what was called the Sunday paper that comes in a tube. And for those of you who are sort of electronic geeks or production people, know televisions used to have things called picture tubes. And so it was a kind of, pun, but it really was your Sunday newspaper and really your Sunday magazine, so that there were long pieces and short pieces and all kinds of stories that if you were reading a magazine, you could flip through and pick the things you wanted to read. And so Sunday morning sort of is like, the way to pull it all together into 90 minutes. It had headlines at the top of the show, so a little bit of hard news, but mostly it was just about telling good stories. Interviews with people, arts and culture, music and theater, all of that is in there, and it still is. And our show hasn't changed format very much in the 42 years. The weekly Monday through Friday show has changed many times. This show has not. The show ends every week with something that we call Moment of Nature. And in the very beginning, Shad Northshield, who loved nature, thought this was a way to bring people a moment of quiet, a sort of time of introspection before you went off and spent the rest of your Sunday doing whatever you wanted to do. And we still do that. I have to say, we don't allot as much time as they used to allot for these, unfortunately, because it does take like a minute and a half to actually enter that quiet time. But just as an aside, somebody who worked on the original Daily Show told me a few years ago that when they created the moment of Zen at the end of the Daily Show, it was based on our moment of nature on our show. And that felt really good. So the original set was designed by a brilliant set decorator, scenic designer named Victor Paganusi. And the original set was designed was for a sports show that never happened, and it is a baseball diamond. And so what you can see on the left-hand side of your screen is actually what would be home. And so even in television, we still called that home base. And there were basically 3 other bases, which were sort of pods, which got used for different things. If you can advance it, Paul, this was a model that was built at the time in 1979 to show what the set would look like. And so what you can see on the left-hand side of that screen, these all used to be fabricated panels every week, which took the scenic artists a very long time to build. Now, of course, it's all electronic, but the basic concept of the set remained the same. And this set, the original set, we kept on the air for a very long time. If you can advance it. This is Charles in the original set. And if you can see in the background, as I said, the days of the week are up there, but there's no Saturday. And this set lasted us until 2017. If you can advance it, this is then Charles Osgood took over. We now had, slightly different panels. Some things have been modified, but the basic footprint, the structure of the set was still there. If you can advance it. In 2017, we built a new set, and it took us a number of years to design, work with designers, because we wanted to keep the essence of the original set, but we needed to update it. And it was sort of like if you have an old house and it's really sort of falling apart. This was really sort of falling apart. This show we did on the brain, the mind. And so I used a lot of augmented reality in this. And I just grabbed it to show you because that light bulb obviously was put in later. And what we did was shoot a lot of the on cameras, and then we worked with an artist who then inserted all of these, a whole bunch of things. We had wild mushrooms, we had all kinds of stuff in the show, which was really fun. Okay, so if you advance it, you can see that we now had like a large monitor as opposed to the stuff that was built in the scenic shop. And we had these 2 skinny monitors that are on the left-hand side. And those were developed just a couple of, I'm guessing 17 or 18, and they're really exactly half of a 16:9 monitor. So it was kind of difficult for us to figure out how to work that out with such an unusual aspect ratio, but we were able to do it, and it gives a whole new feeling to the set. A year ago, March 11th, the broadcast center shut down, and the studio that we did our show in was shut down. And most of you have your own COVID stories. The first week after this shot that you're looking at was from the show on March 8th. The following week, we aired a rerun. The week after that, we aired the show out of LA and something that was really ugly. The third week, we repeated the ugliness. And by the fourth week, we went into a green screen studio. If you can advance it, please. We went into a green screen studio. They were able to work with their artists to take the studio camera shots, put them into After Effects, if any of you guys work with graphics, and marry them and create something that looks virtual. The 60 minutes, although it isn't real virtual anymore, it sort of looks a lot like what their original show did. I was given like 4 or 5 days to say, we're going to be in a green screen studio from now on. And I had a set. So what I did was I took that previous shot that we looked at, I gave it to an artist, and I had him digitally rebuild an empty set for me without Jane, without the flowers, without the images. And so we built this that you're seeing now. We then, you can advance it, then we shoot Jane in front of a total green screen, and it's also a green floor. So we can do her full body. And then if you advance it, then we put her into that scene. And within a couple of weeks, I had probably done, I'd say 4 or 5 different scenes that we just reuse every week. And some people didn't know we weren't on our set, which I guess was an incredible compliment. So now we put together this 90-minute broadcast every week, and everybody's working at home. We go in once a week into the studio. We shoot the on-camera portions. They get uploaded back to a shared video workspace, and editors, we work way more hours than we used to put a show together, and that's what we do. So you guys probably want to know like how I got there, because that's, you're all in school and want to know how to get there, right? So I transferred to Temple my junior year of college. I had been an American history and American literature major, and I had decided that what I really wanted to do was make documentary films. And I looked at the schools, and Temple had a really great documentary film department at that time. It was called Radio and Television and Film, the department then. And you kind of took courses in all three areas. But as you moved along, there were people who really wanted to be filmmakers, and you could tell, and that's where they went. And I took a couple of courses, one with Alex Toogood, who was brilliant, and he was a production person. And the first time I worked with him in a studio, I realized the magic of taking this box and turning it into a world and making cameras show you things that you didn't necessarily even see with your eye. And the other incredible teacher I had was Bob Bradley, who was a performance teacher. And he was a reporter on a local station, and he taught, one or two courses a semester. And I had no desire to ever be a performer or be on camera. But what he taught me was how to work with every anchor I've ever worked with, and people who anchor for the very first time, and how to get them to talk to the camera as if they're talking to a person and hundreds of people at the same time. And he was an amazing teacher. And those two teachers really helped direct me into, where I thought I wanted to be. I was lucky enough to get an internship at WCAU, which at that time was up on City Line Avenue and was the CBS O&O. And I worked on a morning talk show, and I fell in love with being in the control room and doing live television. And I realized that that's what I wanted to do. So after that, I got lucky and got a job on the Thanksgiving Day parade, which you guys probably all know if you're from Philly, the balloons blown up and it's a whole big deal. And Jimmy Hirschfeld, who had worked at WCAU, moved to New York as executive producer of Captain Kangaroo. And but he came back every year and did the Thanksgiving parade. And in CBS, a Thanksgiving parade is 5 cities. They sort of still do that. And so Jimmy brought me to New York after that, and I worked on the parades in New York. And I worked with a director named Mike Gargiulo, who also directed $25,000 Pyramid. And so I used to, because I was the person who ran stuff back and forth for him between, 2 shows and 2 things, I had the opportunity to see him do a game show, as well as learn a lot about how to put together sort of a special one-time only extravaganza every year. And again, I learned a lot from him, and I knew that this is where I wanted to be. After that, I had to figure out how to get to where I wanted to go. So at CBS in those days, you sort of took any job you could get. So I took operational jobs until I finally became an associate director in an operational studio. And in the meantime, I just tried to learn as much as I could along the way. And so Adam, it's not going to really tell you how to get there, but if I can give any suggestions about how to work it, take any opportunity that comes your way, because you never, ever, ever know where that's going to take you. You never know who will open a door to something else that you didn't even know you were interested in. The journey in a career is never a straight line. It will take you in different places as long as you're open to it. And don't even try to make it a straight line because it's not going to work. And you need to be a sponge. I mean, I think the people that do well absorb information from every single person they meet, because again, you never know when that information is going to be important for something you do in the future. Learn what everybody around you does, because as you move up in doing any job, you do your job better if you understand what everybody around you does and how it all interlaces, because I couldn't do my job well, I don't think, if I didn't understand how my artists work or what they did or what the camera operators had to do or how the switcher worked, because I can't ask for something that's impossible. I can only ask for what I think is doable. And you need to understand that to be good at your job, I think. The other thing I think is really important is that you always have to understand the details are extremely important. I found early on in my career that if someone asked me to staple things together, I wanted to be the best stapler that they ever had, because if I screwed that up, how would they ever trust me to do anything else well? And so when I'm sitting in the director's chair and somebody brings me my scripts and it's missing a page, I don't trust them after that. Every single detail in getting a show on the air is really important. And if you're tasked with doing that stuff, you may think it's menial, but it's not, because we've all done them and we know how important the details are. So take them seriously because they really matter. And don't be afraid to ask people if they will just talk to you, because the thing that I found along the way is that everybody will talk to you. Nobody's going to say no, because they're happy to share. And anybody you talk to could lead you to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other interesting people who you can talk to, and that'll help shape who you want to be and where you want to go, and then may give you connections that would lead to a position. Maybe not, and maybe take 20 people that will lead you to a position, but it's really worth that journey, because you'll meet some amazing people and learn a lot along the way. And so this sort of leads me to a sort of almost final thought before we can open this up for questions. Professor Gluck said to me at one point, do you want to talk about, women in television in positions? And I have to say that when the Oscar nominees came out yesterday, and there were 2 women directors, it's just the first time that's ever happened. It's amazing. And it has changed. There are changes. When I started, there were no women directors in television. Now at CBS, and I can only speak for CBS, there are actually more women directors than men. That isn't the case at the other networks, but there are. And yet in production in general, it's still a very male-dominated world. And so 5 years ago, when Sunday Morning won a Daytime Emmy for the first time, we had it on the set. And after the show, my crew said, oh, we need to take a picture of this. We really have to take a picture of this. And I said, okay, took a picture. My stage manager posted it on Facebook. Paul, you want to put it up? And it got posted on Facebook. And I quickly got an email from an old colleague who had retired previously. And she said to me, wow, Nora, I can't believe all these years later, you're still the only woman. And not the only woman, Ricky was the makeup artist. So there were 2 of us. And when we took this picture and put it up, it didn't even enter my mind that my studio crew was still a majority of men, and me and Ricky, who did the makeup. And so it has changed, but it hasn't totally changed. So that's my story. So I'm open to any questions that anybody has.
And I think the way we should do that is raise your hand. We're happy to acknowledge a live question. You can put some questions in the chat as well. My class, if you submitted questions in advance, now is the time to ask them. but we're happy to see who we can see. Why don't we go with Cameron first?
Hi, Nora. Thank you so much for coming in and talking with us. Your story is amazing. And I'm even a fan of CBS Sunday Morning. It's always on in my house at home, actually. So
That's great.
I'm actually a producer myself of Owl Sports Update here at Temple. And you were just saying how you're the only, we're one of the only woman on the staff, and that's actually how it is for me right now. It's a sports show, and I'm mainly surrounded by a lot of men. So I mean, it's great to have more women in the industry, and just being a part of it is just awesome. But one of the questions that I have so many questions, by the way, but one of them I have is, you know, as a producer, I find it hard sometimes to be creative with my show when it's the same format every week. And I was just wondering, as you create your content, how do you make it informative, creative, and entertaining when it is the same structure every show?
I mean, it's a great question. And, you know, I think it evolves all the time. You know, I think you can play around with format and still make it work for you. You know, you can, you know, play with a graphic, or play with the way you do a lead in, or, you know, decide to end your show with something, you know, that's a little bit quirky or different, if that's the direction you want to take it. I think, you know, I think formats are just sort of, you know, the box or the framework that you're putting it in, and then you can be as creative as you want with inside that box. You know, I think the interesting thing, I think, in working in television is that you're never working alone. And, you know, the good and the bad of that is that if you're working with people who are also like creative and on the same wavelength as you are, you know, together you can come up with some great ideas of how to make something happen. You know, my executive producer will call me and say, you know, this week is first week of spring, Nora, you know, what can we do this week? And, you know, I know what he editorially wants to get to, and then I come up with like some way to do it, you know? And so I think you really have to just work with people to come up with those ways. And I think you can. It's just a box, you can play it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Let's do Victoria and then Nick.
Hi, Nora. Thank you again for speaking to us today. I know I can speak for everyone.
I can't tell where you go to school.
Yes. Thank you again. And I can speak for everyone. We're so glad to, you know, be speaking to you virtually. So my question is about mistakes. You mentioned that if someone brings you your scripts and there's a missing, you know, paper in there, you don't really trust them anymore. And on the other hand, a person may make a mistake if they're overlooking something or just in the spur of the moment. And once they realize they made the mistake and now people know and they've lost that trust, they might go home and just be loathing in their, you know, pool of just sorrow. What would you say that person can do to regain that trust? Because I know all of us are going to make mistakes, but it's how we come back from it. So what would you say are the best ways to do that?
That's another great question. You guys are great. Most of us, when we make mistakes, and you're right, we all make mistakes. We all go home and beat ourselves up. I mean, we do. I think we're all our own worst enemies, because all of us, we all have really high standards. And if you make a mistake and you know you're responsible for it, and especially, you know, if it gets on the air, and trust me, I have those stories, and everyone I know does. What you do, I mean, what I've always done is I own up to my mistake. And I say, you know, I screwed up. I'm really sorry. I can't believe I did that. That shouldn't have happened. I should have done this. I should have done that. And the next thing you do is figure out a way to make sure that mistake doesn't happen again. And I think that's all you can do. And I think if you're really conscientious about trying to do the best job possible, and you own up to your errors and learn from them, I think you'll be fine. And so I might have sounded a little harsh about saying that I wouldn't trust that person again, because certainly I have trusted people who have made mistakes, but I just wanted everyone to understand how important the details are. But I think just, you have to accept it. And honestly, we're all our own worst enemies. I can't tell you how many sleepless nights I've had after, I have done something that was a problem, and we all do.
Thank you, Nora.
No, you're welcome.
Nick, and then Brian.
Hi, Nora. My name is Nick. I'm a junior here at Temple. I'm actually with CBS right now, so I'm on my third internship with CBS News as a booking intern at CBS this morning. So I'd actually be in the building with you in New York
If we were.
yes, if it wasn't for COVID. But being with CBS and having a CBS email, I get one email a week that always catches my eye. And it says CBS Sunday Morning is the nation's #1 Sunday morning news program for the 636th consecutive week. And every week it just goes up and it goes up and it goes up. So in this ever-changing television, playing field, you have shows that are up and coming and stuff. I almost look at Sunday morning like a 60 Minutes. You have that very unique sound in the beginning, and they have very unique formats. What are you all doing to keep up with the times to make sure that you are getting the ratings that you get? And you guys are doing something right, obviously, because you're #1. So how is that, staying, it's 636.
Yeah, you're right. It's really interesting. I mean, I think that it's a mix. I think that there's a tradition. I can't tell you how many people I've met who are probably your age, older, younger, who've said, I used to watch this show with my parents. It was a tradition in our household. There are people who say that, Sunday morning is our church. We don't go to church, but this is what we do as a family. So I think it starts with that, but we're very conscious of trying to to work with every demographic. We want it to be an intergenerational story. We want people to watch with their families, and so especially I think in our popular music stuff, we for example, and this was from one of our marketing PR people this morning, that on iTunes, the music that was downloaded after the Grammys, after Sunday, were not necessarily the people who were on the Grammys. They were the people who were on our show on Sunday, which is really fascinating, right? So I don't think I don't think there's a magic way. I think we've just been trying it all the time. We do have, younger people on our staff, and we listen to them. And I think we still try to make it a universal show somehow, so that there's something that appeals, because it's a magazine show, something that appeals to everyone. And, I have to say, my son is in his mid-20s, and he never watched the show with me. I mean, he never watched the show. He doesn't watch television. And in the last year and a half, he actually started watching it routinely and critiquing it, and which makes me feel really good, and so I wish we had the answer, because if we did, we would ensure that we would be doing this every week for another 600 and some odd weeks, right? But we need people like you to come on board and help us, to bring in the next generation of viewers. So thank you. Are you having fun on CTM?
Oh, I love it. It's incredible.
It's a busy show.
Yeah, it's busy. And just like you said, it's woman dominated, like our EP, our seniors.
Well, Shauna just started, and she's great. And Shantae directs it, and Gail is Gail. Gail is Gail. But you haven't been in the building at all.
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good luck.
Ryan, go ahead. You're next.
Thanks, Paul. Hey, Nora, thanks for being with us today. I'm curious to know if there were any other steps, like other jobs in between graduating college and then directing, or if you just went right into directing, because it just seems like it's rare for someone to, at least today, to be directing straight out of college, depending on where you are. And I'm one of the directors for Temple Update, and that's something that I'd love to keep doing in the future. So I'm just wondering if there's any other types of job, maybe like a production assistant job, anything else that might help anyone prepare to be a director in TV.
Oh yeah, I mean, clearly I didn't just walk in and become a director. No, I did radio at WOBM on the Jersey Shore. When I got to New York, I had lots of managerial jobs and associate director jobs, and I worked on other sort of freelance things. I did other stuff outside of CBS as well. And, for someone coming up in the business now, there's like, in some ways, way more opportunity because there's just more shows and more outlets. And, they're not going to be, a DGA union job necessarily, but that doesn't matter because there's so many other places for you to get experience. And so, yeah, I had a million jobs. And in the middle of it, I decided to go to law school because I thought this wasn't going to work, and I became a lawyer. So don't even ask about that. And I didn't practice. But what I can say is when I was at Temple, and I don't know if this is still the case, Professor Gluck or Dean Boardman can answer this. Students were required to take half of our classes outside of the department. And that requirement, a lot of students really hated because, everyone just like wanted to do production because that's what I wanted to do, right? And, the theory was that you can't produce a film or direct a film or tell any kind of story if you don't have anything to say. And you need to know a lot of stuff before you can have something to say. You need to have a sort of broader range of information. And in hindsight, I can tell you that that's really true. And so I would also say that just, if there's like something that you love, if you love rap music or gardening, I mean, I don't know what it is, but, get involved in that thing and then figure out how to merge that with like your love of television and, find a gardening show, or a rap music show that, you can even volunteer once COVID's over and people can start, coming onto sets again and doing that, just find that way and you'll, meander your way into what you want to do. There's no direct route though.
And if I could follow up on that, how long did it take you to start directing?
Start directing. Well, as an AD, I used to fill in on stuff. So I would say that was probably by the early to mid 80s. So I guess maybe certainly less than 10 years after I graduated, I guess. And that's like one of the ways that you can do it if you're like an associate director, and you really sort of learn from your director. Like they would let me do post tapes first, for example. So it wasn't live to air, but it would be a cooking segment that we were going to air the next day, and we would do it as a post tape, or an interview. And you would really sort of learn the rhythm of directing and get to do that without. And so I would say it probably took me 8 years, I don't know, before I was able to start doing that stuff.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, two things. We're going to go to Chris and then Max, but here's a question in the chat from Renuka. Did you take any editing courses at Temple? Would you recommend specific coursework for someone who's interested in that field? And then we'll go to Chris.
I did not take any editing courses. I mean, I because I was the only editing I did was film editing, and so we sort of just did that. We were working in 8mm and super 8mm. So I did not. I mean, as a PA/AD director, I used to work with editors who were physically editing 2-inch tape and then 1-inch tape, digitally doing 1-inch tape. So, but if you want to edit, I mean, I can't imagine that a hands-on course wouldn't be helpful, but if you want to edit at this point, you can be working on, Final Cut, on your own and take a class and learn the nuances of it, of learning how to, really be a good audio editor, which is, I think, in some ways even harder than being a good video editor. It can't hurt to take a class where someone can really teach you some of that. And then I just think you have to play with it because there's a basic skill set, and then there's the nuanced part of editing that makes it an art and not just a technical job.
Thank you. Chris, you're next, and then Max.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Nora, for being here.
Yeah.
Could I ask, like, what an average week looks like for you? Like, what's the productions? Well, we'll just say before COVID.
Okay.
Like, what's the production schedule look like for Sunday morning?
Okay. in a perfect world before COVID.
Yeah, and then
Because
maybe after COVID too.
yeah, it's
or
way
in
different
COVID.
now. We used to have basically it was a Wednesday through Sunday job. On Wednesday, Mondays and Tuesdays, the producers would start to editorially figure out what was going to be in the show. Wednesday, we'd have a production meeting, start to build graphics. Thursday, we would be doing the same thing, working on graphics, and pieces would be getting cut. I would do often some like other just tapings of various anchor things or correspondent things or interviews, sometimes in the studio. Then Friday and Saturday, things would get a little more intense in terms of like pieces being finished by Saturday midday, hopefully screening pieces, looking at graphics, excuse me. And then we would come in, we'd work relatively late Saturday night, so that everything would be ready when we came in at 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. I would go through the graphics list with my PAs, and on Saturday night, I would have blocked the show based on the set that you saw, and blocked all my camera shots and where the anchor was going to be for each shot. Come in Sunday morning, sit with my stage manager, go over all the shots, go over the shots with the camera operators. And we went on the air live at 9 o'clock and we were done at 10:30. So that was basically the week. Now it's completely different because we basically work 7 days a week because that's about how long it takes to put the show together. And because we're not live anymore, we have to feed the show to the media distribution center at CBS Saturday night. And by the time we finish building all the segments, it's always after midnight. Sometimes as late as 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning, and then it airs at 9. So it's a lot harder now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Max and then Paige.
Hi, my name is Max. I'm a sophomore MSP major. Thank you again for coming to speak to us today. My question was, I'm someone who's kind of deciding between maybe doing more on air or behind the camera thing. And as someone who's behind the camera, is there anything like that made you choose behind the camera, like that maybe could be as advice to maybe decide which one I would like to pursue, like any specific trade or thing or just event that really made you fall in love with behind the camera work?
Okay. I don't know, when you're doing what I do, like I'm kind of in charge, so I kind of like that. And I also see the show as a giant jigsaw puzzle. And so I'm taking all these pieces and putting them together to create this whole picture. And I think when if you're an on-air talent person, you have to transmit all this information to the audience, and you have to be able to sell that. But from my perspective, you're one piece of my giant picture. So I think a lot depends on like how you see your role. If you see your role as creating the entirety of the broadcast, or literally sort of being a piece of the broadcast, an important piece, a very important piece, but you're a piece of the broadcast. That's for me the distinction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Paige, you're next, and then we'll read one out of the chat from Olivia.
Hi, I'm Paige. I'm a freshman MSP major, and I'm a really big fan of Sunday Morning. So thank you so much for being here. My question was just, was there ever a time in your life that you felt that your career had stalled or that you hit a wall? And if so, I was wondering just like how you pivoted, like how you got out of that.
Yeah, everybody feels that. And so I think every time you hit those, there's different ways to handle it depending on what it is, if it's, early in your career, you just may be looking in other directions to see if maybe there's something else you want to do. That's probably when I decided to go to law school, because I didn't think I'd ever get to do what I wanted to do in television. But even, when you've been on a show for a very long time, things become very routine and it can feel, like you're just in a rut. And so those are the times where you just have to find the ways to make your job more interesting or creative, come up with a new way to do something, look at it differently. And so you'll definitely hit those, roadblocks along the way and feel like you're not moving forward as quickly enough, as quickly as you want to. I mean, I still remember when I turned 25 thinking, God, I'm 25 and I haven't done anything yet. How is that possible? But you know what? You had done stuff by then and you're going to do more and different stuff. And so if you do ever feel like you're sort of in a rut, take the time to just assess, see what's making you feel that way and, what you can do to recharge and either change direction or just give new energy to what you're doing. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
You're a freshman. Good luck. Thanks for watching.
Here's a question from Olivia while we wait for some more hands to go up. Thank you for sharing your experience and giving valuable advice. One question I had was, I can't see this far. Has it been difficult to film and find content for the show throughout the pandemic? Have you noticed more or less viewers through the pandemic? Have the themes of your content changed over that period?
Again, all good questions. Let's see, starting from the back, have the themes or the content changed? I would say early on in the pandemic, I would say that our shows were probably more pandemic based, probably not as, probably didn't have as much fun in our pieces as we did, but there wasn't a lot of fun going around. And so even now I would say that some of the quirky, fun elements of the shows haven't existed for a year. So, and that part of it, I would say, yes, the content has changed. Has it been hard to find content? I would say no. I would say the harder part has been being able to tell the stories since we can't really go to as many places. We have one staff cameraman who's just been amazing and just goes out anywhere still and does and shoots. But so much of what we do has to be done locally. There's, quarantine regulations. If somebody travels, when they come back, they have to quarantine for 14 days, all that kind of stuff. There's lots of protocols. So it's been harder to get out there and shoot and tell the stories, which is why Zoom has actually worked for a lot of things. But has our audience changed? I would say one of the reasons that I think we've had a really solid audience is because people were home. And so honestly, the person who asked me earlier, like, how do we keep this going? We've always found that our audiences are higher in the winter if it's raining out, but if it's a gray and dreary day. And when it gets nice and sunny, the chances are that people will go outside and may not watch our show. And so, as hopefully the pandemic starts to recede a little bit and people start to go out and do things again, it's possible that we'll lose some of the audience, but it's also summer when we tend to anyway. But it's been a challenge. It's been on our mind the whole time. And I think it does just change the way you tell stories, because anybody that you do interview is going through the same thing that everybody else is going through. Like, how do I deal with what we've been through this year? So I hope that answers it.
Okay, thank you for that. I have one from one of our faculty members, Cheryl Squadrito. Cheryl, do you want to ask out loud?
Sure. I unmuted myself. So hi, thank you so much for participating. I was thrilled to be invited as a professor here. And
you're from Camden County, right?
Yeah, I'm from Haddonfield, New Jersey. Yeah,
I grew up in Cherry Hill. Know it well.
Oh, right down the street. Very good. And we've so I teach music, marketing, and media as an adjunct. I do PR during the day, and my family and I watch it together. But I've also assigned it to my students, and some of them already have it in the habit of watching the show. Right. But I've seen Sting. I saw that beautiful segment that you did about Michael, I'm going to say his name wrong, the one who got nominated for a Grammy, Paul McCartney. And when we sit there as a family watching it, we wonder, I wonder what was left on the cutting room floor.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of them. Mm-hmm. And we had a guest speaker for my class. We had the pop music writer from the New York Times on, and she was she had mentioned that CBS Sunday Morning sometimes scoops her.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. So is there, besides what was left on the cutting room floor, is there a performer that CBS Sunday Morning would love to interview that you haven't? I mean, you've had Paul McCartney and everybody on.
Right.
But they're my two questions as an avid viewer, and thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Well, I don't know. Well, we have a arts producer who really has his, all of his contacts, and that's how we get most of these stories and in most of these interviews. And who haven't we done?
Wait, not to interrupt, was that Ramon Parkins?
Yeah, you know Ramon.
I just know him. I've pitched him once a really great story about kids who play rock and roll years and years ago, but I love his segments. He's so good. So,
and he's behind every single arts piece, whether he produces it or not. He's basically the person who kind of has the contacts and gets the connection and gets the interview.
I just know his name from being on the screen. So
but,
sorry to interrupt, but he's great.
But for example, and now I've just which was the other piece? Oh, it was the Steve Hartman piece last week on Jimmy Duck Holmes.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Duck Holmes's producer is Dan Auerbach. Now Dan Auerbach is from right, and Anthony Mason had done many pieces with them, and Ramon has worked with them. So like anything else, that connection has continued. So that's how he knows that. When I had a question about something about Jimmy Holmes this week, Ramon called Dan to ask the question. And so I think that's how we get a lot of it. I think to answer and not answer your question about who don't we have, I think depending on who you ask, you would get a different answer. Ramon would give you one answer, and I don't know what that is. Anthony Mason, who's done amazing music pieces over the years, would say someone else. Jane Pauley would say someone else. Tracy Smith would say someone else. So I think a little bit of that is kind of personal, but it's a great question that I just don't know the answer to.
Gotcha. Anything good that was left on the cutting room floor that you're allowed to share?
Nothing off the top of my head. There's a ton of stuff. And I think one of the things that we're working on, hopefully, is now that CBS All Access has become Paramount Plus, we're starting to work on to be able to give content. Some of the stuff ends up on the web, by the way. There are lots of web extras of stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor. And if you ever, after especially a music piece, there'll be a whole other segment of the stuff that didn't make it into the piece on the web.
We've watched those. Yeah.
And we're working on like, how do we maybe get some of that stuff onto Paramount Plus as well? But yeah, those editing decisions are really hard when you're doing a story. There's always good stuff that doesn't make it in, which is unfortunate because you could do in probably at least an hour on most of these people who are,
Well, we call it brain food in our house when it's on. So
I love that. That's great.
Thank you. Bravo.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we have about 4 minutes left. So Brenna, you're next.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. Hi, Nora. My name is Brenna. Thank you so very much for being here. I think one of my comments, or one of your comments that stuck out to me, was about women in media, especially women in leadership roles. And in honor of Women's History Month, I am president of the Sports Media Society for Women at Temple and within Klein. And we empower women seeking careers in sports media through professional development workshops. And I'm curious to know, what one piece of advice have you carried throughout your career that has, kind of empowered you, especially for women in a leadership position?
Well, personally, I just always believed that I could do whatever I wanted to do. And I didn't think that anyone was going to stop me. And I never thought that it mattered that if I was a woman or a man. It just never entered my mind. And so when I would hit those roadblocks, I was always shocked. And I still hit them. I think the cliches about women in all positions, not just in media, is totally true. It is totally true that I will sit in a meeting and I will say something, I think it'd be a great idea if we did blah, blah, blah in graphics, and nobody hears me. And then 5 minutes later, a man will say exactly the same thing, and they'll say, Bob, what a great idea. It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And so I think women's voices often are still just noise in the background for some people. And I'm hoping that as there are more of us in these positions over time, that will not be the case. But I think it clearly still is in many ways. And so, I mean, I really, applaud the next generation, because I know, I mean, it was very hard for us to get where we were. And I'm hoping that we made a path that's easier for you guys to get there. And I think that you should know that I think most women in positions will talk to you and help you along the way, because most of us really do see it as our goal to make sure there are more of us there. So thank you.
Thank you, Brenna. Also, Brenna will want to have a meeting with you. She wants to have meetings with everybody. But before we wrap up, what's your next act? Because nobody ever finishes in this business. We all
me personally?
Yeah, what's the thing you want to do? There's going to be some Tuesday you're going to say, okay, enough with the trumpets. I want to. What's your next thing that you'd like to do?
God, Paul, I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, right now I'm just, trying to get each show on the air week after week, and it feels like rinse and repeat. So I'm looking to take a break from rinse and repeat. And I don't know. I really don't know. It's one of those things that I think whatever comes next will sort of come.
You'll find.
But
This teaching thing.
If you have a great suggestion, give me a call.
The teaching thing's a great racket. Well, the dean knows that already. At any rate,
give us a call if you ever have interest in that. That's for sure.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like all of you to take a moment and really thank her for joining us. Nora is a busy person with an extraordinary responsibility. Thank you all for coming. There is another Power Hour that comes, I believe, at 5:30 with Ray Boyd from the Philadelphia Inquirer, moderated by our friend John DiCarlo, and Dawn will put the link to that in the chat for those of you who are interested in that. My class, see you guys next time. Bernie Presenica will join us then. Nora, thank you.
Thank you. This was great, guys. I love talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks so much, Nora, and great job, students. Wonderful questions. Thank you.
Definitely great questions.
Be well. Take care, Nora.
Okay, take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.